What measures will you advocate for to address gun violence while respecting Second Amendment rights?
I
just talked about it.
kind of just talked about it, yeah.
Let's get specific.
I get okay. So, we're sorry. Repeat the question.
Jesus.
What measures will you advocate for to address gun violence while respecting Second Amendment rights?
So to address, shut the fuck up. I didn't do that for you, motherfucker.
I know.
To address gun violence, I think a big part of why there is violence in America when it comes to guns, when you look at these school shootings or just a general rise in crime, right? I don't think these things have to do with any like the weapons that are being used themselves. I think there's a deep underlying issue why these things happen. I think a big one is the mental health crisis in this country. People being over medicated. There's a really sick incentive with big pharma and excuse me, with federal government and the healthcare system that I think needs to be addressed. That could be a really underlying issue with why these kids, carry out the acts they do. I think another way for that problem specifically, I think a good way to solve that would be armed security. People taking measures in the law that allow, like I said before in the last question, allowing people to defend themselves. So like I said, I would end the NRA, and I just don't believe that that having gun restrictions for that issue is effective. That's all.
All right. What about you, Lolo?
I agree with a lot of what Coleman just said. I believe that things like poverty and over-medication are definitely a huge reason as to why so much gun violence has taken place. I think another thing with when it comes to gun violence, I think it is overstretched by the left side of the media a lot of times.
Yes.
I think it is deeply overstretched. If you're going to have guns, guns are going to be used. Now, if we take out the guns, does that take away the violence? Not necessarily. I do believe that there is a massive issue with kids and their firearms and, like school shootings. I think there's a massive issue. And there's so many things, there's so many ideas that you can come up with to try to be like, this is the issue. And I think what we need to do is talk more. Our country needs to be more connected instead of just seeing things like your president and your Congress on the TV and it being so hard to get disseminated this information in order for you to understand it. I think we really need to open things up more to the people. We need to talk about this as real people and really figure out what the issue is. Maybe it is all of these issues together. And we just need to make the necessary steps, feeding these people correctly, making sure we're helping our economic state, making sure we're helping our industrial state, more roads, better roads, less aggressive traveling. There's so many things that could go into somebody's day to get you irritated, to get you stressed out. And we just need to make a more simple life for our people. I don't know. I'm just shooting shit.
Hey, you're getting the hang of it. You're becoming a politician.
Yeah, we're actually filling the time slot now. We're falling into it.
All right. Last question.
Last question.
Okay.
Lolo, what is your plan to improve healthcare accessibility and affordability for all Americans, including those with pre-existing conditions?
Okay, this just really confused me because were we going to talk about the last question more at all? Did we? I don't. I mean, we ran out of time. It.
I mean, we ran out. I mean, I don't know. You and I. I mean, again, I think you and I actually agree a lot on that. So.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much like cutthroat down the middle.
I think
besides completely, when you said artillery, which was technically the question before, but allowing people to defend themselves with whatever artillery, I was like, whoa, artillery is a strong word. I don't think that people need to have fucking mortars.
I think ordnance is the better word there.
Yeah.
Sure.
People just having fucking grenades and shit on hand could get extremely wild and expensive.
You know what's interesting though? Sorry to deviate, but like dynamite, when dynamite was created, like it wasn't even used as a weapon until like like the Haymarket. For those who aren't familiar, the Haymarket
People,
Square.
this is the stat too. When you think about these things, this is like the stat that they always leave out, especially like the radically left people. Is like there is so many more people now. Like, we're not going to talk about how our country tripled in size from this period to this time period. Like, so obviously there's always going to be violence, right?
Yes.
So if you take the violence rate between 1,000 people, which obviously we weren't that small, and then fucking 1 million people, it's like, obviously there's going to be technically more violence with 1 million people. There's way more fucking people. So, like, these things are just going to happen. That's why I put up the argument when it's just like, well, with how many kids died today and how many kids died just tragically. I'm like, they did then, too. Any time period you looked at. Is it worse that they died in a school shooting, or is it worse because they got sent to literal war? Like, I mean, they're both kids dying.
I agree. Yeah.
So either way you look at it, it's kids dying, right? I think we could agree on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people look at, whatever school shootings or petty robberies or whatever that, guns are associated with violence without looking at the scope of government, how much violence that they do, not even overseas, but like with the police in our country, people going into people's homes and, essentially in my mind.
The police have to be a huge issue when it comes to gun violence as well, honestly. The way that...
Well, they don't allow people to properly defend themselves because they're like, you have to use us as the resource for your defense.
And not just that, the way they treat people on just like a consistent basis. Like when the people that are supposed to lead and protect you, you're taught as a small child that these are people that you're supposed to feel safe with and you're supposed to respect and look at them as a leader. When they consistently do the opposite, it's going to, You put these people in this position and you taught thousands, millions of kids that these are the people for them to look up to. And then they lead our country in domestic violence. If you really chalk it up, they probably damn near lead our country in murders. It's like, let's really talk about who's being violent with guns.
I agree. I think the issue is painted in a divisive way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always like anything. It's painted to support your side.
I did leave out too that not only do they appoint them as like, you grow up and they want you to look at them as leadership. They all also carry guns.
Yeah, well, I that was something I remember now. I was gonna mention that there's no statistic because it's an impossible thing to account for. How many instances of violence are actually prevented, just not even from the use of a firearm, but just from presenting a firearm. Mm-hmm. For literally, like, somebody's about to rob you and you're like, hey, I got a fucking Glock right here, and they got nothing. Or there was one video I saw where like these like 4 or 5 black kids like went, of course, no, I'm kidding.
There goes your vote. There goes your
We're only an hour into the podcast.
I'm kidding. No, but these 4 children, not children, these 4 kids like came into this jewelry store, like come and like I think they had bats or golf clubs or something. This old 70-year-old guy pulls out a single pistol, doesn't even fire a shot, just points it at them. All 4 or 5 of them turn right around, run out the door, and drive away. You know what I mean?
And
like,
that's another problem is like when it comes to their idols, like there's people that those kids are stuck around that they're looking up to, and that's like things that they did, and so that's what's wanting or making them want to take that route and go and do things like that. And there was always people like that. There was always going to be people that grew up in an area where they were idolizing people that they probably shouldn't, because those people are going to cause them to do things that are very inappropriate. And then when on the other side you put the cops in there and then they do the same thing, what route are you going to turn? I mean, either way, you're going to end up doing some fucking ridiculous shit 90% of the time. So
yeah.